Hi, I'm Mr. Pink, otherwise known as Modern Synthesis, and in this video we're going to be taking another look at a Tyranid kit that maybe hasn't seen that much love since its recent re-release, and of course I'm talking about the Genestealer kit. I wanted to do a video on this kit because I don't see enough people doing conversions of it, and there are some very amazing bits in here that you could use for all kinds of stuff. We're going to get into all that in this video. First I'm going to show you how to build the kit, and then I'm going to go into 4 different conversions that you can do with escalating amounts of green stuff involved to really make these your own and make them look a little more like the vanguard organisms that they're supposed to be, running after lictors into battle. And I wanted to say, this particular box of Genestealers was sent to me by the fine folks at Fenris Workshop, a Canadian retailer that sells to Canada and the United States, both miniatures, but also all kinds of paints, tools. They even have a used section, so you can do some eBay rescues right there on their site while you're buying all the other cool stuff that you need for your hobby. So go check out their website. We've got an affiliate link in the description below. And if you do place an order with Fenris, make sure to use the code pink-fenris. That's pink-fenris at checkout, because that will get you an additional 10% off their already discounted prices. But first, check out this video, because we're going to do some really fun things with this kit. Let's check it out. So I was lucky enough to receive this beautiful haul of Tyranid stuff from the fine folks over at Fenris Workshop. Got some Tyranid's datasheet cards, got some Tyranid dice, got some AK liquid pigment in a super vibrant pink color. I've since used this and it's friggin' phenomenal. And of course, the pièce de résistance, the most recent Genestealer release. So first things first, let's crack open this Genestealer box and have a look at the instructions here. You can see the build guide here. They show you a bunch of different head options that you can put on each of these Genestealers. Ever since the plastic Genestealer kit came out in 4th edition, we've been spoiled with a number of cool options on the Genestealer sprue. Here I've aligned the old heads on the top row, the new heads from the new 10th edition plastic Genestealers, and can see they kind of correspond. And then of course, the thing that we've all been waiting for since these models came out in 4th edition, feeder tendril heads. Enough feeder tendril heads for all the Genestealers. Pretty amazing. So next up, let's look at the arms. Old Genestealer hands, a little weird to look at, but the new ones are clearly much hotter. But what I wanted to point out here is there's a couple of Easter eggs in here where new claws are being posed like the old claws were on old Genestealer kits. Top one, this is a classic from the 2nd edition blue Genestealers, probably older than that, Space Hulk blue Genestealers. 2 fingers extended, 2 fingers curled under, really weird pose back then. Cool, much better looking pose now, but cool that they held that over. And then the next one down, we see the kind of like Spock Vulcan greeting split fingers pose that was so well known from the rear ending claws on the 4th edition plastic Genestealers. And it's kind of cool that they've got a nod to that in the new kit. And the bottom 2, not as direct a copy as the old kits, but I felt like these ones corresponded with arms in the old kits. And it's just cool that the designers have those nods back to where these kits started. First thing to notice is that the legs are not attached to the torso. It used to be the case that you'd have at least one leg attached to the torso in the old ones. It kind of messed with your ability to pose them. Really happy to see that that's not happening in the new ones. You can see that the new bodies are much larger than the old bodies, and the tails are much larger and more pronounced. I think the fact that the new Genestealers have longer legs is a real glow up for this kit. The old Genestealers, I think the reason their arms look so weird and gangly is that their legs were so short in comparison. So these new legs are a great improvement, even if the feet are a little big. And they are way more dynamically posed than the old ones. And I think that that length really helps to do the kind of like leaping poses that the new Genestealer kit. So really great to see it. Also, can we please talk about the fact that these legs are not attached to pieces of scenery or attached to tabs on the base? I love it. All right, now that we've looked at the kit, let's build some Genestealers. First up, just using plastic glue here. You can use super glue if you want, but plastic glue is really great for models when they fit together so seamlessly, like the new kits from Games Workshop do. So I'm just attaching the rear carapace plates to the back of this thing. And I really love how this slots into the back with that little section in the vertebrae. This is a really badass Genestealer who's just jumping over a pipe, and he just looks like he's coming at you. I think he's amazing. I think he captures everything that a Genestealer should be. So when I wanted to build one of the Genestealer stock, this is the one I chose. Kit goes together pretty easily. The only weird thing I'd warn you about is the part where it attaches to the base, because the hand is in 2 sections and it kind of like slots into the base, and the fingers are on the actual piece of scenery on the base. You just want to make sure that you clean the joints around this very well. You lube them up with a lot of plastic glue. Once you've got that hand attached to that pipe that attaches to the base, just got to get some super glue on the bottom of the pipe, and voila. Here's how he looks. But we're not going to stop here. We're going to take this kit even further. I'm going to start off with some bit swap conversions here, and then I'm going to do some conversions that involve a little bit of green stuff to conversions that might involve a little more green stuff. First up, let's do a piece of Tyranid history very close to my heart. I love these guys. the Yarl Genestealers. These were introduced in the 5th edition codex. They were supposed to be this really cool idea that it was like this unstable strain of the Genestealer virus. Really cool art in the actual codex. Never made any models for it. They just said, oh, put some feeder tendrils on your Genestealers, call them Yarl, and call it a day. So what I wanted to do with this conversion is really show that weird, mutated, unstable, constant evolution. So first up, I built a Genestealer stock, just like we saw before. But the key point here, if this is going to be a Yarl Genestealer, it needs to have a feeder tendril head. We have to really introduce the idea that these things are an unstable mutation. First arm right here, this is from a Chaos spawn. Looks kind of like a Scything Talon, but it has that mutation thing where different spikes are growing out of it, and I really like that to capture the Yarl factor. I just took the Chaos spawn arm that I'm using here. I chopped off the ball on the end of it that's supposed to go in the socket because it's a bit too large. Once that's set, I come in and I put the one arm from the stock Genestealer kit in. It's a rending claw, so I put that in the back left socket. Back right, I've got a Venomthrope whip here, which I think is really cool, and it kind of shows the motion of the creature with the way it's dragging behind it. And for the 4th arm, I realized I didn't get close-up footage of, I used a Scything Talon from a Ravner. I like the idea of both of the front arms being kind of like Scything Talons. There you go, that's our 4 arms, and literally it's just gluing those on. Not much more than that. For our second conversion, I'm gonna build a Genestealer that doesn't look quite as heavily armored as the stock build. So this one's a bit of a weird one, and I just did it because I'm a Genestealer nerd. It's a callback to what the back carapaces looked like in the 4th edition Genestealer kit, the ones that just were retired. The easiest way to remove these armor plates, I think, is to glue in just that one spinal column segment that slots in and holds this whole piece onto the Genestealer. Only put glue on the vertebra. Don't touch the armor plates at all with your glue. And that's what we're doing here. And then I come back with my favorite chisel blade, and I just follow along the sides of that spinal column, just carefully slicing away at the connection points for the armor plates on the left and right side. And you can see here that it comes off pretty clean. And I mean, you could leave your Genestealer like this. You don't have to do anything more with it, but it does look like it's a little low detail around where the arms are. So what I'm doing here is I got some green stuff on the model. I'm going to sculpt in a little bit of back detail around where the arms are, and I'm going to blend it in with the rear spinal column just to make it make a little more sense and leave like a small suggestion of kind of rear carapace armor going over the arms, but not as big and chunky as those armor plates were. So just get your green stuff on here, make it into the rough shape that tapers at the front, tapers at the back, and kind of is a little wider over the arms. And then I come in with a silicone shaper tool here. And what I'm doing is just kind of trying to use the ridges along the back spinal area of the Genestealer as a guide for where I want to put ridges in my green stuff. I realized I didn't have enough green stuff there, so I'm just adding some more to extend those kind of small back carapace bits towards the back, blending it in with the model here, using a metal spoon tool. And I'm going to come in with the silicone shaper and just really blend this right into the ridges on the back here so that it's not as obvious that I added this part. And that's a key thing with when you're sculpting green stuff, especially on Tyranid. You just want to like put it into areas, and then you want to continue the textures that are coming from like the area beside it onto the part you're sculpting, make it really blend in. So now I've got that kind of armor ridge. Now I'm trying to shape it around the arms. I'm tucking it down between the arms and having it like come up in a ridge over where the body. Key point here is you'll see that what I'm sculpting on it pinches down between the two arms, and I just think that makes it look a little more natural, and it also emphasizes the part where it bulges up over the arms as kind of an armor plate. And then you'll see here I've got my black silicone shaper again, and I'm starting from where spinal projections are and going with the tip of the tool pushing down towards where the arms are, just to make these little like divots in this structure I'm sculpting here. This is kind of similar to what you would see on those 4th edition Genestealers. Whenever I've got like a flat area like you see here above the arms, I just like to add a little bit of like ridging or detail, because most of these models are going to be painted with contrast paints and washes and stuff like that. So I just want to find some places for them to like cool up in the recesses. That's why I'm introducing these additional ridges. You don't have to do it if you really want to like paint in detail there, but I'm lazy. I want it to just be, you know, ready to receive the paint and do the work for me. So what I did is from the back spinal ridge where you got those kind of sport chimney looking things sticking up, I followed the ridges that are already in the plastic model with my silicone shaper, like following those ridges down into the green stuff. And now I'm going in with a metal needle tool and just going to the base of each of those ridges where they go into the kind of carapace bony structure, and just poking them in more. Just poking them in more to make it more pronounced where the ridges end in the bony kind of structure. Basically, if you're sculpting something and you're like, that area looks a little plain, go and add some stuff. Q360 footage. Job's a good one. In 2016, Games Workshop released a new plastic Genestealer. Blink and you missed it. There were only 2 of them, and they were in the Deathwatch Overkill box, which is what launched the Genestealer call. These are really cool Genestealers. They really, to me, were nods back to the 2nd edition plastics from Space Hulk. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna remake these Deathwatch Overkill Genestealers. When you're assembling the Deathwatch Overkill Genestealer, remember what we just did with the 4th edition one. It's exactly how you start this Deathwatch Overkill conversion. And then what you do is you go in and you cut out every other vertebrae that sticks up off the back, just with a hobby knife or with a pair of clippers. So I plunk the balls of green stuff in here, but I want these sections to be more or less kind of flat. So I get a flat silicone shaper, lube it up, and go in and just flatten out these bulges from left to right. And then I get my metal knife tool and just start cutting in the ridges for these sections. You can do as many ridges as you want. I would say don't do more than 5 or 6 because they'll just start getting too small. The key thing is to make sure that they're pretty much straight left to right and that they're all like parallel with each other and that they're all roughly the same size. If you watched my How to Sculpt Tyranid vents video, you will recognize this sculpting technique. This is exactly how we do the insides of the vents. Other key things to note when you're sculpting these ridges in the back of the Overkill style Genestealers, you don't want to push way down in the putty. You're putting in a shallow ridge that runs around the back of the miniature. Don't cut way down in it. You don't want it to be too deep between them. Just kind of like the same depth all the way around. So first I mark the gaps between the different sections. And then what you'll see me do is I go in with the tip of my knife tool and I kind of like at the base of each of these arches that we've just carved into the green stuff, I push down, I make like a more pronounced dent at the bottom of each of these arches that we've sculpted around the model to kind of give the suggestion that it's going, the tissue continues down into the creature. It doesn't just stop at the edge of the section. So once those ridges that you sculpted on the back are dry, you can come back with some more green stuff and add it at the bases. What we're doing here is we're kind of replacing the back armor plates that we clipped off this model with plates that fit closer to the body and look less kind of heavily armored. This is the look and feel that we're trying to emulate from what those Deathwatch Overkill Genestealers look like. So I'm just smoothing out these plates with some silicone shapers, introducing a little divot in them above where the gap between the 2 arms is, just to make it more interesting so it's not one big plate going all the way down, and it looks more like 2 rounded plates, one over each of the arms. Key thing here is I'm going in and I'm cleaning up around where I had those ridges sculpted. But let the ridges dry, and then you don't have to worry about doing what I'm doing here, which is I'm adjusting these armor plates along the shoulder region, but then I'm also messing with the ribs in the middle. And that's why you see me going in here and finicking with it. Had I let those ridges on the central axis of the back cure first, I wouldn't have to worry about that. It would be much easier to sculpt these armor plates. So yeah, I'm just coming in with a rounded silicone shaper here and just kind of giving putting a little more texture on these armor plates that are running beside the ridges on the back of the Genestealer and just making sure that they're blending in with other parts of the model sculpting. And then I just go in with a knife tool down here near the tail and I'm just cleaning up some little excess putty too much of on there. And here we go. We've got the old Deathwatch Overkill Genestealer here I have painted up. And we're comparing our sculpting job to it. Not too bad, pretty close, right? Yeah, if you're wondering about what to do with like the ridging on those armor plate kind of things around the central axis, just take a look at one of these models, look up a picture of one on the internet, and it'll definitely help you out. Not bad, looking pretty close here. Pretty happy with how that turned out. And for the final Genestealer that we're gonna do in this video, this is going to be a Lictor Genestealer. Let's get into it. First thing you do when you're building Genestealer, you attach the back, then you go and you cut the torso before you attach anything else. Then we go and we find an extra Genestealer called back armor plate. We cut between the 2 armor plates on each side so that we have like a front and a back section. Next up, we got our handy dandy pin vise and we drill some holes in the carapace for a brass pin because we're going to use that to attach the torso to the tail. We want a brass pin because it'll allow us to pose it a little bit, cut it off. I tend to cut my pins longer than I need to, and then I can cut them down to size as I get the right size. So I'm cutting this one a little long here. You don't want the tail to be in line with the torso like it was before because that would be a standard Genestealer and it'll cause problems later. You want to have it a little bit so that the tail is kind of curving up, or you think about it, the rib cage torso back section is curving back toward you. Basically, we're trying to make it more upright using this. Try to get that central ridge in the spine to line up with the central ridge on the tail, or else it might look a little weird. Once you got that tail nicely posed, you're happy with it, just go ahead and glue on the legs. You just glue the legs on like normal. Next up, we have to get the head on here, but we don't want the head to be in the standard alignment that it would be on the stock Genestealer build, because that would have the head looking straight up into the air, because the profile of a Genestealer is pretty low, and the head is kind of like canted back so that it looks forward. But because we've made this Genestealer so much more upright, we need to actually have the head bend down, like kind of like bend the chin down towards the chest. So it's more looking forward because the torso is now so upright. But the stock neck on the Genestealer doesn't really work with that. So what I'm going to go in here with some clippers, I'm going to clip off the neck from the torso, and I'm also going to clip off a bit of the neck from the head to give us the space to pin it on properly. So I attached that head on here using the pin. I also put a little super glue on the tentacle because I know it's going to attach to the chest there and just give it another strength. Then I take the armor plate that we prepared earlier where we chopped it up. I get the smaller part of it and I kind of carved it down to be this kind of like front shoulder, front chest sort of armor plate. And then what I do is I reinforce it with a little bit of super glue behind it and sodium bicarbonate or baking soda if you live in North America. I go in and prepare the creature's scything talon arms. I use 4th edition Genestealer scything talon arms. They're really cool arms. They're really crappy scything talons. So I clip off the scything talons and I got some donor scything talons from my Von Ryan's Leapers. So I just clean both sides flush and just plastic glue them together here. I wanted to pose the Genestealer's arms a little bit so that they weren't just sticking out at the sides. So I grabbed one of the Rending Claw arms. I chopped it at the elbow with my razor saw here and just put another pin there and glued it together with a pin so that I'd be able to better pose it. Very easy to do. So right here you can see I'm going in with some clippers and I'm cleaning off some of the back carapace because I found that it stuck out too much at the bottom, so I wanted to get rid of it. But another thing you can see here is what we did with that other extra armor plate that we cut earlier. We took the smaller part from it and we used that to make the kind of like chest, shouldery armor at the front. And then we take the rest of that plate, the larger section with more detail on it, and we mount that above the existing Genestealer's back carapace armor. And this is to emulate that kind of like weird behind his head backpack thing that the Lictor has. And that's where the Lictor's grasping talons glue in, kind of above its top arms and kind of behind its head. So we had to just kind of recreate that for this Genestealer Lictor here, and that's what we use that extra armor plate for. Now we just have to marry those together with a little bit of green stuff. First up, I'm going to fill in those lower arm sockets that we're not using. So I just get some green stuff there, cover them up. Again, don't put too much green stuff. And the main thing I'm doing here is just looking at the rib structures on the model. So I'm using silicone shapers here, and I'm just kind of extending the rib structures that you see along the front of the model around the sides and in to tuck in under the armor plates in the back. People are not going to be able to see this very well, so it's not too much work. You just have to make sure it's smooth and just kind of continue on the, like I said before, continue on the patterns you see from the front. And really get it perfect on one side, and then you have a reference point for copying on the other side. Also, don't feel like you need to sculpt both sides at the same time if you haven't done a lot of rib sculpting. The next thing I have to do is, because we modified this creature to have a more upright pose, he's got a big gap where his waist should be. So I'm just getting a little bit of green stuff here and just, again, sculpting those rib structures down to the waist. And this is just a matter of looking at the texture above and below, imitating it, and then just blending it into other textures at the sides. Next up, I have to fill in the neck. So similarly, I get a good amount of putty, I smooth it out with a metal tool, and then I go in with my silicone tool to sculpt in the detail on the neck. Missed that part, but mostly this is just filler work, and it's a little bit obscured by the armor plates anyway. It's behind the creature's head. People aren't probably going to see it that much, so you don't have to worry too much. Don't be too fussy. Finally, there was a bit of a gap between that big shoulder plate that we added on the back where we mounted the scything talon arms and the smaller shoulder plate on the chest. So here you just basically have to link those two with some green stuff to fill in that gap. So it looks like one big armor plate that goes all the way around, because that's kind of what we see on a Lictor. So you can look to a Lictor for reference, or you can look at one of the other Genestealers that I sculpted on here, because kind of things that we did for the Deathwatch Overkill, so Genestealer's back carapace around the ridges would very much help you here. So you're pretty much done, because you already know how to do that, because you already watched that part of the video. Fantastic. All right, and there we are. Here we have our two Lictor Genestealer brothers that I've made up. I'm pretty happy with these. I think they're really cool, and I think that it really harkens to the role of the Genestealer as a Vanguard organism in a primarily Vanguard swarm where it's got a lot of Lictors. I think these will fit in really well, running alongside Neurolictors, Lictors, Death Leaper, all that kind of stuff. So there you have it. 5 different ways to build the Genestealer kit, 1 stock, 4 different conversions that pay homage to earlier versions and create a little something new for the new Vanguard swarm list that we got in the most recent codex. Hope you've been inspired by this to either try one of these versions or inspired to come up with your own conversion for this kit. And if you do that, I want to know all about it. Let me know in the comments below what kind of stuff you've done with the Genestealer kit, or if you want to build one of these. And let me know if there are other kits that you would like me to do a similar video about to see all the cool conversions that we can make from them. Thanks again to Fenris Workshop for helping out with this video by providing the kit. Go check them out at the affiliate link below, and I look forward to sculpting with you soon. Bye.